Welcome back to Weekly Briefing. We have officially entered a new presidential election year. Very exciting news for us here on Weekly Briefing. Yet the talk of the town is on both Maine and Colorado attempting to bar former President Donald Trump, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination, from the ballot. Trump's legal team is appealing rulings in both states, and experts are calling for the U.S. Supreme Court to step in and issue uniform guidance on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And Jonathan, this is an interesting turn of events because you have this Secretary of State up in Maine, not actually elected by anybody, appointed, and she's decided to take the former president off the ballot, and bada bing, bada boom. Yeah. Where are we?
Yeah, imagine that. So a quasi-elected official, I think it's the state legislature, unlike most states where the governor appoints, I think it's the state legislature that puts this person forward. Obviously, a liberal Democrat, one who worked for the ACLU, and she, by a very short opinion, says, I don't think Trump should be on the ballot. She claims, of course, claiming he was participating in an insurrection, claiming that his oath as an officer requires him to fall under the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. All these things, I think Trump's legal team has been wise in challenging. They've challenged it both in Maine. They'll challenge it in Colorado. Their Supreme Court obviously have sided against Trump, but the United States Supreme Court does have an emergency docket where they should hear this quite immediately. Two things that I think come out of this. One, it obviously shows that the left is afraid of a Donald Trump. If you're going to try to remove him from the ballot, it's because they're afraid of his actual chance of winning, especially in comparison to the current president that we have. And second, at the same time, you'll see that if he wasn't so forward, if he wasn't such a reasonable candidate for a good majority of the Americans, they would have nothing to be afraid of. So those two things certainly show that they're on their back heel and they're using all sorts of legal avenues to try to get rid of him. Ultimately, I think it should be a 9-0 decision from the United States Supreme Court to maintain his ability to be in those states and any other states going forward that try to remove him.
Jenny, I think the Trump campaign has officially filed with the Supreme Court. Jonathan saying that they have an obligation to act quickly and probably will, but do they really have to act quickly? I mean, he's on the ballot. This taking him off the ballot has stayed until this legal situation is resolved, so presumably they don't actually have to rule in order for him to be on the ballot. Are they actually under an obligation to act here?
Right, and I think the timing here is, of course, you want things to move quickly because for the voters at the end of the day, who this is about, those are the people that are supposed to be making this decision. And you also have the fact here that complicates things is that Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, has not been found guilty of insurrection, which is what these, are based on. These removals from the ballot are based on. So there's a lot to really discuss here from the Supreme Court's, viewpoint, and the clock is ticking on this election.
Donna, are Democrats afraid? Is this why they're trying to keep him off the ballot? Do they fear Donald Trump? Do they fear that he could actually win? So this is their strategy to defeat him at the ballot box?
I think the biggest fear is the fact that they know they have an inadequate candidate right now. And I don't want to hear about voter suppression anymore because this is the ultimate voter suppression. I mean, I don't want to hear about people that can't get ID cards, that can't have bottles of water and lunch when they're standing in line because they can't vote. I don't want to hear about any of that when you sit down there and suppress the votes of some 81 million voters in this country, that you tell them that two individuals can decide who's going to be on the ballot and who they can vote for. This is what you call voter suppression.
What do you think the chances are that some conservatives might begin to want to take maybe Joe Biden off the ballot in some red states, do you suppose?
Well, I mean, that's a real possibility, but the fact of the matter is Democrats, they engage in something so aggressive that they say, we're going to let you decide who you can vote for and who you can't. I mean, not only are they making the standards of what you can drive and what you can't, what appliances you can have in your house and what you can't, but now they're going to say who you can vote for. I mean, it's not a real election if there's one person on the ballot. I mean, this is the ultimate micromanaging control. I mean, I don't know. Hitler would be proud right now because Joe Biden, I'm sorry, this administration has surpassed anything that's anything that you could imagine. I mean, there are KKK members shouting right now because this is crazy that you would sit there and say, no, as a voter, I'm going to tell you this is the only choice I'm going to give you, whether they're qualified or not. If they think they have a candidate that is winnable, then let the voters decide that. Don't sit down there and tell them, we're going to take away your choices.
Let the voters decide. I think we heard it here from Donna, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this as it wends its way through the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, House Republicans are preparing to kick the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden into high gear. Oversight Committee Chairman Jamie Comer and Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan sent a letter to the White House requesting communications between Hunter Biden and his attorneys and the White House looking for any smoking gun regarding obstruction. In addition, House Republicans are seeking testimony from Jim Biden's business associate, Michael Lewitt.
Jim Biden's going to have an opportunity. We're going to give him due process. He's going to have an opportunity to come in and explain some of these payments, but a lot of money that Jim Biden received were direct payments from some of these Hunter Biden shell companies. Jim Biden has a company that looks to me like is a lobbying firm. He's not a registered lobbyist, but he'll have an opportunity to come in and answer a lot of specific questions about some specific transactions.
So a lot to unpack there, John. It's kind of interesting that this is kind of moving from Hunter Biden now to Jim Biden, the president's brother, not the president's son, and actually Jim Biden's business manager, not Hunter Biden's business manager. And we're talking about America, or not we're talking about Ukraine or the Chinese or the Uzbekis or anybody like that. Is this just spreading?
I mean, there's so many smoking guns that they could have put a whole gang of people in prison right now. I mean, this is so crazy. If they think that the White House is going to cooperate, they're not going to. They just need to move forward with what they have right now. But the fact of the matter is they've been taking way too long. There's so much there that they already have that Democrats would have made 5 cases if this was in the reverse right now. I mean, Democrats made an impeachment case on somebody heard that somebody heard that somebody heard, and they had it done in a matter of weeks. Against Mr. Trump. Against Mr. Trump. Now, against Mr. Biden, there's overkill.
So you say it's time to get on with it.
It's time to get on with it. If nothing else, conservative voters want to see that the conservatives that they put in office will actually act. Nobody in Congress seems to be afraid of anything that conservatives do because they always feel like they're not going to move fast enough or nothing's going to get done. I hope that they're sincere in their quest to be able to go forward with not just an inquiry, but the impeachment trial itself. But, I fear that the election will be over before we see anything. But, my fingers are crossed. I hope they act because there's a lot of conservative voters that really want to believe in this political system.
Donna's fingers are crossed. She says the conservatives, Republicans need to get a spine and move on. Is there enough evidence? Is there enough evidence to move forward on impeachment? What do you think? How's that going to work out?
Well, I think right now this focus on this payment from Jim Biden to Joe Biden, the $200,000 check that was paid to him through this, failed AmeriCorps, this company, that's kind of the focus right now. And I think that they are trying to find that smoking gun still because they are under the microscope of the media, the Democrats, the White House, who is going to say, I predict, who is going to say that the Republicans in the House are wasting their time. They're holding up funding right now to Ukraine, the border, and all of that, things that, especially the border, things that the Republicans want to fund. And I can see this being, weaponized by the White House. I think they're going to respond.
Jonathan, any chance this gets weaponized by the White House?
Yeah, well, it's consistent with how the DOJ has operated, using the force of government, the federal force of government, to go after average Americans while ignoring the crimes that are in front of them. Are there impeachable offenses? Of course they are. If we want to boil it down to 4 things, there's substantial evidence that links Hunter Biden, now Jim Biden, their business adventures with Jim's brother, Hunter's father, the president, which implicate the president inappropriately. The president has made false claims based on his knowledge of these conversations, these transactions. The president has had foreknowledge of these subpoenas coming down the road and has, I don't know if he's advised, but certainly knew that his son were going to ignore these subpoenas and what they've done to these whistleblowers, these IRS whistleblowers that have exposed what is going on using the force of Attorney General Merrick Garland, using the force of the federal government to suppress some of those testimonies. The president is implicated in all of these things, and it's plain as day, as you mentioned, Donna, that now is the time to go after him. We can keep taking steps in the right direction. We can keep finding other alternatives or other avenues to further see how entangled the president is in this. But there's already substantial evidence that we ought to use to go after the president in this regard for an impeachment. And it is the right and the will of the American people, I believe, to go and do so. But to your ultimate question, yeah, the DOJ is going to use as much as they can to weaponize against either members of Congress or even a former president that wants to bring some of these things to light.
Panelists, we have about a minute left. It's time for our crystal ball question. As we just discussed in the previous segment, Harvard President Claudine Gay just resigned from her position as president of Harvard. Panelists, gaze into your crystal ball and tell me, if you could handpick a replacement, who would it be and why? Donna.
It should be Carol Swain because they've already reviewed her work when it was submitted by Claudine Gay.
Wow, that's very good. Jenny?
I think it should be a Jewish woman, and this is a point in time where I really miss Joan Rivers. I think she would just totally unabashedly be so pro-Israel and so pro-Jewish students on campus, but also hilarious.
Or Don Rickles, maybe, for that matter. Who knows?
Yeah, a good college administrator, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, the Colorado head coach.
Wow.
Because I think he'd open up the transfer portal and surround the university with folks that would bring Harvard University back to its original purpose. They had a motto in 1614 that says, everyone should consider as the main end of his life and studies to know God and Jesus Christ, which is eternal life. So a good Christian man, Deion Sanders, should be at the forefront of that university.
Good Christian man. He might actually be able to start a football team at Harvard. Oh, that's right. They do have a football team. I forgot. Oh, my gosh. Gee whiz. He might be find a football team at Harvard. That would be an interesting development. Earth-shattering, earth-shattering. Guys, thank you very much. This is great to have you here. A great way to start off the new year, 2024. Very exciting. We are, unfortunately, all out of time. Thank you for being here. Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett joins me remotely from God's country, East Tennessee. Do not touch that dial. Back in a minute.